Hey there folks, today I'm going to show you how to play the absolute most famous banjo tune of all time, Foggy Mountain Breakdown by Earl Scruggs. And here's the really cool thing about the arrangement that I'm going to show you today. I would say that this arrangement is kind of beginner friendly, meaning that if you've been through my 30 Days of Banjo course or another beginner banjo course, or maybe you've already learned a couple tunes, then this is probably a good spot for you to learn this tune. But not only that, it's also pretty much exactly what Earl Scruggs played on the most famous recording of this tune. Of course, not everything that Earl Scruggs played is particularly beginner-friendly, but I will say that a lot of the things he played are based on a couple really basic ideas, the fundamentals of bluegrass banjo, strung together in a lot of interesting ways. And the things that are really interesting about his playing is how well he plays it, how musical it is when he plays it, and sometimes just how fast he plays it. But that doesn't mean that those ideas are inaccessible to a beginner. But if you're going through this lesson and you find that it is too difficult for you, then go ahead and check out my 30 Days of Banjo course, which is a free 30-day course that'll get you up to speed on everything that's going to happen in this song. And for context, it's a really good idea to listen to the original recording of this song, recorded in 1949 by Flatt and Scruggs. That's Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs. They had a band in the late 40s through the beginning of the 70s, and they played this song throughout that entire career. But the original recording from 1949 is my favorite, and I think the best. Now you'll notice the original recording is very fast, much faster than what I played at the beginning of this video. And that's kind of what's cool about it. It's what makes it exciting. But I wouldn't worry about getting up to that speed yet. The cool thing about this tune is it sounds good at any speed, and you can work on this for the rest of your life and get it up to that speed, up to the musicianship of Earl Scruggs. In fact, let's check out an even slower version of the tune right now. I'm going to play through everything that I'm going to show you today at a slower tempo, and then we'll get into exactly how to do all of that. I'll also say that if you want the tablature in PDF format for everything in this video and everything in all of my videos, you can find that at patreon.com/EliGilbertBanjo. That's where I post the tablature for all of my content. There's a bunch of bonus content. It's a great way to support the videos that I'm making. But if you just want to look at the tablature all on one page, that's where you can find that. So there's a link in the description of this video where you can find that. Anyway, moving on. So the first thing we're going to do to play this tune is what's known as a pinch. And we're going to play that on the 5th, 3rd, and 1st string with your thumb, index, and middle finger. That's all you have to do is just all 3 notes at the same time. Moving on from there, let's just talk about the first measure, which sounds like this. We're going to start with a hammer-on the 2nd string from the 2nd fret to the 3rd fret, like this. After that, we're going to move on to another hammer-on, same place, same string. It's going to happen a little faster, followed by the open 1st string, like this. Let's hear both of those next to each other. Now what you might have noticed is that the first time I hit that 2nd string, I'm using my index finger, and the second time I'm using my thumb. That might seem totally counterintuitive, but I promise up at faster speeds, I think it's actually a little easier to play, and there's something about it that gives it the sound of Earl Scruggs. That's actually how he played it. So even if it doesn't feel intuitive right now, I encourage you to give it a try. You can do it both ways if you want to, but at least try to use your thumb there. Now the second half of that measure is even simpler. It's just a forward roll starting on the 5th string, going 5, 2, 1, 5. And that's the whole first measure. We have a hammer-on, followed by a hammer-on in the 1st string, and then a forward roll. Here's the hammer-on. We have hammer-on in the 1st string. We have forward roll. And you can just loop that over and over again. That's a great way to practice that. And that's not just the first measure of the tune, that's actually the first two measures. You'll repeat that twice at the beginning of the tune. After that, we have a very similar measure. Here's the third measure of the tune. Now you notice the first half is exactly the same. Same thing we've already been playing. It's the hammer-on, followed by another hammer-on, and the first string. We have another forward roll after that, but there's something different happening. It's no longer just on the open strings, we have a pull-off as well. So for that second half of the measure, you're going to play the fifth string, followed by a pull-off from 3 to 2 on the third string. That's with your middle and index finger. Followed by the first string and then the fifth string. So it sounds like this. And notice that in the right hand, you're doing the exact same thing on all of these measures. At the end there, you're doing thumb, index, middle, thumb. It's on a different set of strings. There's a pull-off in there, but actually the right hand is kind of doing the same thing. That's going to be helpful in terms of visualizing what this is supposed to feel like. In theory, playing this and this should feel kind of the same in the right hand, even though the left hand is doing something kind of different. So here's the first three measures of the tune. That leads us to the last measure in this phrase, measure 4, which goes like this. So we have our third string, strings 5, 3, 1, 3, followed by fret 1 on the fourth string, hammer on to 2. Now, because there are so many parts of this tune that actually repeat each other, you're just about halfway there. You've learned about half of the unique material that happens in the tune, if not more. Now, as we're moving through this, feel free to spend as much time as you need just focusing on individual measures, individual phrases. You can just repeat that until it feels comfortable, and then you can move on. You don't have to go through this entire video at the same pace as I'm speaking. You can pause it, slow it down, rewind, all of that, whatever's comfortable for you. Moving on to the next measure, which is where we get to the E minor section of this tune. We've just done a hammer on from fret 1 to 2 on the fourth string, and that note that we land on, that second fret on the fourth string, is the first note of that next measure. And this is a super simple one, so you've already done the hammer on. All you have to do is fret 2 on the first string, then open second and third string. So using this E minor shape, we're going to start by hammering on to the second fret of the fourth string and then continuing that forward roll. So that's hammering on here. Then strings 2, 1, 5. So altogether that's... Then we're going to do strings 1, 3, 4, 1. And that last note, we're going to take our finger off and it'll be just open. So that sounds like this. And that's another measure that you can just loop around and around. Sounds like this. From there, we move on to what is the most common bluegrass banjo lick there is. Some people just call it the G lick. There's a couple different variations, but this is probably the most common way that you'll see it. It sounds like this. So this measure goes open third string, open first string with your thumb and middle finger. Then open fifth string with your thumb. Then you're going to slide on the third string from 2 to 3. Then open first string, open third string, followed by fret 2 on the fourth string, followed by the open first string. All together. And this is yet another measure that you can just repeat over and over and over again. Now, this isn't super crucial right now if you're still on the beginner end of things, but if you want this to sound a little bit more like Earl Scruggs, then as you slide from fret 2 to fret 3, you just want to give that string a little bend. So this is what normally happens. We just slide from fret 2 to 3. And here's what happens if you give it a little bit of a bend. Just a little bit out of tune, right? But it actually sounds better in context. There's a lesson I've made where you can check out that technique more in depth, and I'll leave a link in the description of this video where you can check that out. So if you're not quite ready for that, then go ahead and skip it. But if you're interested, go ahead and check that out. It's going to help you understand a little bit more of how to get that Scruggs sound into these ideas. But moving on, the next measure is one we've actually seen before. That's right, it's the exact same measure we already played leading back to the E minor. So if you already learned that one, then you're already good to go. And here's what we have so far. Now here's what's cool. The next 4 measures of this tune are pretty much identical to the previous 4 measures. There's nothing new that we're going to learn, that just happens slightly differently. But here's what the next 4 measures sounds like. So as you'll notice, we start exactly the same way with our E minor shape. We even go to that G lick afterwards. Then we just do that exact lick again. Instead of doing the lick where we lead back to the E minor, we just repeat the same lick twice. So again, it's just our E minor shape. Followed by the same G lick twice in a row. Now moving on from there, we start to see some new material because we're going to a D chord. So here's the first measure of that next section. So we're going to start with the open 4th string. Then we're going to do our hammer on from 2 to 3 on the 2nd string, followed by the open 1st string. We've actually already done this, but now just in a different context. Then we're going to leave this finger planted on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and we're going to play our forward roll again from the beginning of the tune, but in a different context. That's going to be strings 5, 2, 1, 5. So all together. Then here's the following measure. And in this case, we're going to repeat that hammer on from 2 to 3 on the 2nd string, followed by the open 1st string. Just going to do that twice in a row. And we're going to do the same thing from the beginning, where we start with our index finger, then the second time we repeat it, we do the thumb. Again, at higher speeds, it actually makes things a lot easier. Then we have another familiar piece of information, something from earlier in the tune. It's going to be 5th string, pull off from 3 to 2 on the 3rd string, open 1st string, and then back to the 5th string again. So all together. And then we move on to the second 2 measures of that phrase, which sounds like this. So that starts with the same G lick we played before, but this time we're starting with our index finger. The only reason we're doing that is because we just played our thumb previous to that, so we don't want to repeat our thumb twice on 2 different strings right after each other. That can be a little cumbersome. So in this case, just start with your index finger. Sounds like this. And we finish with a classic pinching pattern you'll see all over the place. That's the open 3rd string, followed by the 2 outside strings, followed by the open 2nd string, followed by the 2 outside strings. So again, here's that final 4 measures of the tune. And that is basically the entire tune. I say basically because actually when people play this tune, they tend to play it twice in a row, and then it's the next instrument's turn. And if you listen to the original 1949 recording of the tune, then you'll notice the second time he plays it basically exactly the same. Later in the tune, he's got some variations, which I'll cover in future lessons, but for the moment, generally people will play the same both times the first time through the tune. That said, you might have noticed at the beginning of this video, I played an example just one time through the tune and then played an actual ending to the song, ending up here. So I also want to go over that so you have a way to end the tune at the end of the song after you're done playing it all. And here's how that goes. You play the entire tune exactly the way that I just showed it to you. You play it twice in a row, but it's those last 4 measures that change the last time you play it. So here's those last 4 measures with the ending. Now the rest of this tune I would consider somewhat beginner friendly. It at least uses some basic concepts, and even if you don't play it exactly like Earl or up to speed, you can really play the tune using those basic concepts. This ending is definitely a little more advanced, so if this is too challenging for you, don't even worry about it, come back to it later. But it does sound cool, so it's worth checking out, just at least to try it. So start by putting your index finger on the 8th fret of the 2nd string, then your ring finger on the 9th fret of the 1st string. This is going to feel strange because technically we're not even going to use this whole shape, but there's so much about the Earl Scruggs language that requires this shape that it's a good idea to get used to it now. There's easier ways to play this lick, but if you learn it this way, it's going to open up a lot of doors down the road. So holding this shape, you're going to play open 5th string, then you're going to use your little finger, you're going to reach that up to the 11th fret. I know that can be uncomfortable. Try not to stretch too much. If you can, try to point your hand down the frets this way, and then just extend your little finger. If it's challenging right now, it does get easier, I promise. We're going to play that 11th fret, followed by the 9th fret on the 1st string. So these two things have to happen back to back, which means you need to hold this position that whole time. So those 3 notes, followed by another 5th string. So all 4. Then you're going to play with your middle finger, fret 9 on the 3rd string, followed by fret 7 on the 3rd string with your index finger here. All together. Just getting that can be challenging enough, so feel free to just focus on that for now. But that's really the hardest part of it, because after that, you just move up and you play frets 16 and 17 on the 1st string. And that's it. Now that's the whole tune and the ending, but here's a couple things to consider as you get more familiar with this material. As you're playing this, you might notice that it's hard to really articulate everything exactly the same. At a slower speed, it's almost like we exaggerate things. That slide, everything about it is a little bit exaggerated, and that's totally fine. As you get faster, some of that starts to blend together. It can be hard to tell if you're actually sliding at the right time, if the slide is lasting long enough, if everything's starting to blend together. That can happen, but you just want to make sure that you're emulating the sound that you actually want to hear. So at a slow speed, it might sound like this. But at a faster speed, you might not really be able to tell the difference. So it's worth listening to players that you really appreciate, especially Earl Scruggs, to see if what you're doing lines up with that. If you think too much about what the tablature says or what I'm describing, then you might forget to actually listen to the music. Listening is going to be the best way for you to emulate that sound and get what you're actually trying to get out of the tune and out of the instrument. But the rest is up to you to really learn this tune and practice it and enjoy it. I hope you found this helpful. Feel free to check out Patreon if you want to get the tablature for this and all of my lessons. Feel free to subscribe to this channel, like this video, all of that stuff. But otherwise, that's going to do it. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.